Hello and welcome to another Marksman guide. This time it's a leveling guide for the upcoming patch 0.9, and I wanted to give you like the full SSF season start experience with no gear and stash, no endgame uniques that you require for some of the top tier builds for Marksman. Just like a good concept of some skill combinations to go through story, normal monolith into endgame, empowered monolith, until you find one of the basically build enabling uniques. Before we start, I could also recommend Tarek. He's a speedrunner. He's usually showing also like really good setups to reach endgame quick, so I will link his channel in the description below. Maybe before we start, we can talk a little bit about the top tier builds for 0.9. Basically, it will still be Bow Mage by Lizard. It will still be the Shadow Hail of Arrows builds that I have on my channel. Dragon Song builds will still be very powerful in 0.9. There are many variants. I have one on my channel. There's also like a hybrid version by Perry. There's also one by McFluffin. Those are pretty much the top tier bows in the game. You can also still do something with multi-shot, something like the shotgun multi-shot guide by Aaron. There are some ballista guides out there. There is still the popular decoy bomber build by Amarathi, which is also still viable. So basically all the builds that you see on 0.84 or 0.85, they are all still viable. The patch notes are still coming, but I don't expect like any major changes. If so, I will also, of course, let you know. Let's start with the build that I will start basically also on 0.9. I will level Bleed Puncture into Detonating Arrow into the Shadow Hail of Arrows setup, but I would not recommend for new players to go into Shadow Hail of Arrows early on. You can pretty much stick into Bleed Puncture into Crit Detonating Arrow, which is very powerful early on and also until endgame. And yeah, I will just give you like a full overview now. When you start with your character, the first skill basically that you have is Flurry. I usually go Flurry into the first attack speed node until you reach Puncture, which you already get into level 5. So I respec my Flurry into Puncture. The leveling path here looks like this. I will put 2 points into the bleed chance, 1 point into the frenzy duration so that we get 20% increased attack speed to apply bleed stacks more often. And usually the playstyle looks like this. So I'm usually kiting a lot, doing stutter steps. I would highly recommend to not stand still with your marksman, because marksmen are usually very squishy, so you also or always have to make sure to be mobile, to run around and not be stationary. After that, I will put all my points into Bloodthirst and the rest of the points into Hunger, just to get more flat bleed chance. Pretty much until this point, you will already reach Detonating Arrow in Chapter 4. Once you unlock your second specialization, I'll go into Shift. For Shift, it is really important for me just to get the speed buff here. So you can either go 3 points in here and then here. What I like to do is I go over the left side, because most of the builds use shurikens or some crit multiplier buffs here. So I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 points into here. So every time after using Shift, we get the speed buff. After that, I'll put 1 more point into here, into this to be basically invulnerable while shifting. And then 1 point into here just to have a little bit of a dodge boost after we use Shift, which is pretty good defensively. After that, you should pretty much reach the point where you can basically choose your mastery. This will be, of course, Marksman to enable Detonating Arrow. So what I do here, once I have it, I put 1 point in here, 1 point Sucker Punch, 2 points in here, 2 points in here to get a little bit of the tendrils. I don't want to spec all the four points here in the beginning, because I want to get the more damage multipliers over here. So we put 1, 1, 2 points here and another point here. The combination Sucker Punch, Arrow, Rapid Detonation basically looks like this. Normally you have an arming time, but with Sucker Punch and the Rapid Detonation node, you basically make it so that the explosion comes a little bit faster. The explosion is bigger, the damage is higher because of the 100% increased damage node here. And this setup alone pretty much brings you through story and normal monolith. It's super powerful. In 0.9 here you can see it's a 150% damage effectiveness. In 0.9 it will be 200%. So it is very important on your gear to have to always basically upgrade your bow with high flat damage implicit, and also make sure on the prefixes that you get either bow physical damage or bow fire damage. This will greatly boost your detonating arrow damage. And before, as I said, bleed puncture until you reach this point. After this, your puncture basically will also or only be your mana generator with this node. So all the rest of the points you will enable will go into here to get more mana. And on the sapping strikes node, I will talk about this later in the passives. After that, you pretty much really don't need anything else. This is all you need to go through the story. Run all the time, don't be stationary. Try to pull enemies into one line with puncture. That's why puncture is so strong, because it can pierce, and if they all run behind you, you just basically play like this and can kill all the enemies behind you. And for bosses, detonating arrow is your skill. Bleed will go a little bit more down later into endgame or later into story with the damage. Detonating arrow with the crit setup will basically give you a lot of DPS for bosses to clear out the story faster. For the other two skills, it's pretty much open to you. What I usually like to do is my fourth skill is Smoke Bomb, only to reach the Silver Shroud buff here, because with Silver Shroud you get a guaranteed dodge. So every time on boss fights I just use this. The next hit that will hit me I can dodge. So it's a very safe and good utility skill, just to make the leveling a little bit easier. The other points I usually now put 2 points into here to get the cleanse. After that you can either go by duration. What also is very efficient is to go into the dust shrouds or into the slow stack. So you could do like this, max this out, and then at the end you go into the duration with all the rest of your points. The last skill, you can either go the shuriken setup or you can go with with decoy. If you go decoy, you basically just put 4 points into here to get the additional charge. This will look like this. I have to wait a little bit, that you can, when there's like a dangerous situation, that you just throw the decoy out. In the next dangerous situation, another decoy, and then you're pretty much safe and can run away, shoot the enemy from the back, kill him. Very safe playstyle. I usually don't like to spec into decoy because it's already so strong without specialization. So you have your normal decoy with the taunt, and I just leave it here on the skill bar. That's why my last skill, usually I go with shurikens for the armor buff. 3 points in here, 1 point, 1 point, 3 points in here. After that you buff the duration. On 0.9 you only get 3 points here, not the 4. And the rest of your points after that go into the pierce chance, so that when you use shift and have the shurikens out, that you will basically have the armor up all the time. This is pretty much the setup for the skills. There's like no big mechanic behind it. It's just very efficient to play because of the skill mechanic by Puncture with the pierce and the early bleed points that you can get. It's very strong in the beginning, very good single target damage, very good clear speed, and detonating arrow with tendrils, with the sucker punch, rapid detonation setup, really strong for single target damage. All the other points after this will go into damage, so the rest of the points will go into here, into attack speed, into more tendrils, and then you have 2 more points, or 3 depending on if you have plus skills on your body armor. They will go into here just for another more damage multiplier. For passives, what I like to do is pretty much start with Rogue here, 8 points into Swift Assassin for the attack speed and for the flat physical damage, which is really strong early on when we scale the bleed damage by Puncture. After that, I put 1, 1, 5 to get the 25% haste chance. Also, we get more increased damage per point of movement speed. With Marksman, you usually scale a lot of movement speed with silver rings, both of them here, and of course the movement speed on your boots. So that's a really good early damage boost. And of course the haste is really good early on to just go, you know, fast through the story to reach endgame. So this is my go-to setup in the beginning, 8, 1, 1, 5. Then you have a couple more points until you reach Marksman. You could either go 4 points into Sapping Strikes and then 1 point into here, or already 5 points into Steady Hand. I usually prefer this route here, 4 here, 1 here to reach 20 points. After that, you reach Marksman. Once you reach Marksman, 8 points in here, 1 point in here, 1 point in here, to fully spec into Woundmaker. Woundmaker is absolutely broken and will still be super broken in 0.9. The fix will probably come later. This will basically allow you to perma-crit after a couple of seconds. Once the crit vulnerability shred is on top, you always see those yellow numbers. And those are your big damage numbers. Super easy for Marksman to crit. Make sure to reach this point as early as you can. After that, I put 1 point in here, 5 points in here for increased movement speed. I like to have movement speed early on while leveling, just to, you know, go through faster through the story. When I have 10% movement speed here, I usually switch to Blade Dancer to get 5 points into here for another 8% increased movement speed, and then I switch back to Marksman. After that, I put 8 points in here and pretty much spec the full elemental arrows tree here. How elemental arrows works is once I move, I get all the stacks here, 4 elemental arrows, and when you shoot, basically you get a big damage buff with all the added damage that you will get from elemental arrows. Once I have this setup up, I put 1 point in here, 1 point in here for the Silver Shroud stack. Basically, once you attack, you have a free dodge for the next hit. So this is a very good defensive setup to abuse early on. And then I would fully focus into the damage and crits nodes at the end. So 1 point in here, 5 points in here to get even more crit multiplier. You can get a little bit of AoE to reach 1 point in here, 2 points in here for the detonating arrow explosion. And then with the sharpshooter, 4 points usually are enough because you are on range and you will basically always have your sharpshooters buffs up, as you can see. 4 points are enough to reach the shred chance and also the stun chance, which is a really good combo in offensive numbers and also defensively to stun enemies with the shock and the crit that you provide with detonating arrow. Pretty much the most important nodes, I focus on speed, I focus on damage early on, and once I have all my damage nodes, I focus more into defense. Defensive nodes are something like glancing blow chance for the rogue, so you can put 5 points in here, you can put all the points into here in Blade Dancer to reach 31, I think it is at the end, and the rest you normally get with the arrow guard quiver to reach higher glancing blow nodes or numbers. All the other basically points are going into health and into leech. You have enough health on hit, so you don't really need the leech early on. I usually prefer to pretty much use this unique that you get in chapter 2 until endgame, because you have the extra leech, but normally marksmen are pretty good with the life on hit here, the life on hit here, and the life on crit with this one. So the sustain is really, really strong on marksmen in general. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's nothing, no special mechanics here. It's just like efficient when to use a certain passive. I will also link like the full level progression with the new Last Epoch tools, Planner by Dammit, so that you can always look up how the leveling process looks like. For gear, the only thing really that you need to focus on early on is to get the movement speed rings, movement speed on your boots. Always make sure that you upgrade your bow. Just make sure to have like the highest bow damage number on the implicit. And if you can, just focus on putting the damage prefixes, bow physical damage and bow fire damage, on top of your bow and on top of your quiver. The rest is really only about resistances. I always focus on resistances and health first while leveling. Make sure to cap them. There's one trick that most of the players basically use now. Only focus on these type of idols to get something like a necrotic, physical resistance, and most importantly also the vitality on the prefix. Or you can get something like this with increased health and flat health. What I like to do is I put my loot filler up. I will just show you real quick how I do it. Recolor, color, affixes, go into here, scroll down into general idols, put all the resistances and all the health nodes here. Elemental, vitality, this is pretty much it. Confirm, bam. Now you have your new loot filter. You can name it something like idols, updates, and once you drop some of these, you will see it immediately, and they will give you really good buffs with your resistances and your health. So pretty much straightforward leveling. If you have any questions, just let me know. As I said, I will link the planner. I will also link some of the build guides from me or for some other content creators, the top tier builds for the upcoming patch. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good start into 0.9 and see you soon. Bye bye.